get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Indiana Arts Commission Quarterly Business Meeting. It's Friday, June 25th, 2021 at 9:45 a.m. We're in the Indiana Government Center South, room C, in Indianapolis. I want to welcome everyone who's joining us, and we will go ahead and start with introductions of those who are in attendance, and then we'll do those who are commissioners that are online with us. Let's start down with Deanna.
Yeah, Boltzmann, IAC staff.
Anna Traviser, IAC staff.
Connie Brom, IAC staff.
Bridget Eckert, IAC staff.
Maya Michelson, IAC staff.
Chad Bolser, Commissioner, Richmond.
Kelsey Pieper, Commissioner, Region 7.
Ann Valentine, Commissioner from Carmel.
Alan Platt, Commissioner, Floyd Snobs.
Louis Ricky, Executive Director.
Alberta Barker, Commissioner, Lafayette.
I always look at my sign. I look at my sign.
Lori McRobbie, Commissioner Bloomington.
Greg Hall, Commissioner, Indianapolis, Region 7.
Present Callan.
I just say-
Jeffersonville, Indiana, Region 12.
Lisa Abbott, Commissioner from Fishers, Region 7. Paige Sharp, IAC staff.
Stephanie Findler, IAC staff.
And Chief Schnick, IAC staff.
And those on the phone, I'll start with Dave.
Dave Heist, Commissioner from Wabash and Culver.
Libby.
Libby Chu, Upton Dunes, Region 1.
Walter.
Walter Kanabe, Commissioner, Indianapolis.
Jake.
Jake Oakman, Commissioner, Indianapolis.
Dusty.
Dusty Stemmer, Commissioner, Chesterton, Indiana.
Sophia.
Sophia Soto, Commissioner, Carmel.
There's Larry Peugeot, Region Arts Partner.
Larry. Oh, there is Larry. Hi, Larry. Introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. I'm Larry Peugeot. I'm representing the regional partners. I am actually from Region 8.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we will get started. Oh, I see Sally on there too.
It's Stephanie.
Hey, Sally Gaskill, Bloomington. Lewis asked me to speak in a bit about advocacy.
Yeah, glad to have you and good to see you. Well, welcome everyone.
Alan, we have a staff member, Stephanie Haynes, who's also on Zoom.
Oh,
so
there she is. I'm
okay.
so sorry. Thank you. Stephanie, introduce yourself.
Hi, Stephanie Haynes, IAC staff.
Okay, I want to now look and make sure I've got everybody. I like to call this meeting the last hurrah, so if I mess up, it's all good. Okay, well, anyway, welcome everybody. We'll move to the approval of the agenda and the March 12th, 2021 meeting minutes. Those were circulated by email and are also in your packets. Are there any comments or corrections in advance of those? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept those as submitted?
Dave Heist, so moved.
Okay, Dave.
Jake Oakman, second.
All right, motion second, maybe a third. And Stephanie, will you go ahead and take the vote, please?
Yes, Lisa Abbott.
Aye.
Alberta Barker.
Aye.
Chad Bolser.
Aye.
Libby Chu.
Aye.
Ruth Ann Cowling.
Aye.
Dave Heist.
Aye.
Greg Hull.
Aye.
Walter Kanabe.
Aye.
Lori McRobbie.
Aye.
Jake Oakman.
Aye.
Kelsey Pieper. Aye. Alan Platt.
Aye.
Sophia Soto.
Aye.
Dusty Stummer.
Aye.
Ann Valentine.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the executive committee and executive director reports, the agency financials. Maya, Lewis, let me go.
Sure, I'll jump in and then Lewis will, I'm sure, have additional comments. You're looking at May 2021 year to date. We're obviously in the last month of our fiscal year. This is the month prior to that. I'll point out three. You see the three arrows on the screen. I'll point out three areas of carryover for us. You can see we are on target budget-wise. We anticipate three areas that will be carrying some funds over for FY22. Chapin, will you go over to the next, would you take us to the next slide? Yeah. So you will look here at expenses, on-ramp, as well as the creative agent grant. Both of those will be carried over into the next fiscal year. We're showing a surplus of about $111,000, and that is primarily those funds that are carried over from these grants. We have spent or will have spent our entire state appropriation in FY21, which is a good thing. So happy to answer any questions about where we are.
Any questions?
Close to the end of the fiscal year.
You have anything to add on this one? Okay. We need to approve the fiscal year 2021 year to date, or May 2021 year to date. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Lori. Any other comments or? Okay, Stephanie?
Lisa,
Aye.
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
Libby,
Aye.
thank you. Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Dre,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Lori? Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey. Aye. Alan,
Aye.
Sophia. Come back. Dusty,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
motion carried. Thank you.
Go to the fiscal year 2022 budget presentation, which is the kind of the light gray sheet. Oh, sorry, Ruth Ann.
Do we need to approve the agenda? We approved the minutes.
We did both. I didn't join.
Did you say both?
Yeah. Did I?
I don't.
Yes.
I did. Okay.
Okay, good. We didn't hear it.
That's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. Subheading. it's all
Sorry
good.
about that.
So I thought I would kind of review our budget building strategy for this year. So to start with, the state has announced the holdback on our state appropriation for the year. So every year our appropriation is dinged a certain percent with money that we cannot spend from our appropriation. That money is put in reserve, and at the end of the year, it goes into the general fund of the state. And unless there's some sort of emergency situation, you're generally not allowed to access it. We have accessed it in a very small way a couple of times in our history, mostly personnel types of things that will allow something from. And that's been something that I think, we've operated in accordance with their wishes. Some agencies play a little bit of games, they purposely short themselves, and then they make cases for the reserve. Sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. We've never really taken that strategy. So 2% is pretty average, I think, for a reserve. It's probably ranged from 0.5% to 1 year during the recession, we were up to 17 or 18%, something ridiculous, but that's where we start with this budget. So we started by trying to, especially given the situation that our arts cultural organizations have been in with the pandemic, to try to make sort of a stable framework for that. So FY22 operating support awards are based on FY20 numbers, what they received in 20, which was the last kind of normal year of operation for them. So they're going to receive about 2% more than FY21 this past year, but about 2% less than FY20. So very much just in line with the reserve piece of things. And as you recall, the core awards were judged based on kind of responsible continuance of the organization. So we sort of took our normal processes and culled it down to, are you continuing? And then we'll talk a little bit about the merit awards, which was kind of the only kind of really judged piece of it. We do have, you'll see that there's art money coming directly from the National Endowment for the Arts. It's listed in the budget as an income and expense line, but that program has yet to be developed. We're in the process of doing that. So the intentions is that those funds will benefit our operating support organizations that are part of the FY22 pool here. But as well, we're going to have a piece of it that's open to any arts organization in the state, whether or not they are currently a AOS recipient of ours. So this brings into the fold organizations that are arts organizations that might typically apply under the project piece of things, or maybe work in past years, AOS organizations are perhaps too new or have too small budgets to have considered it, et cetera. So as you remember, we did the ACDMO grants this past year with the $10 million that the governor gave us. And in that, we unearthed a lot of new potential relationships for us in the state, small arts organizations, rural and urban, that we did not know before. So we wanted to help bring them into this, opportunity here. We are also going to have about $140,000 of NEA art money through Arts Midwest, our regional partner. So they took their amount from the NEA and they're dividing it up among the states. And we're still in development with that, but we intend for those to be more community level awards to communities rather than to organizations, and to use some pre-existing framework that we have, their cultural district program, our spotlight communities, maybe even some of a sister agencies programs like Stellar Communities to make those awards on the community level. We do have built into this some initial money. You all reviewed a job description for a new program officer position. So there is money in the budget for that. That comes from the ARPA monies in this year's budget that we are receiving directly from the NEA, which is allowable for the organization to keep up to $50,000 for their own purposes. But we've also tried to cull down external contracts and other things to buy some money for next year for this position, because we'll have to figure out how to fund it in perpetuity, and we're operating under obviously an appropriation that is a little more than 7% less, and a reserve that's 2%. So we're operating, about 9% down here. So we need some strategies to fill that future hole in a way that we can maybe bring some funds across the bar of the fiscal year into next year to help jumpstart paying for that position. We have put in a small amount of money for a consultant to work with the formation of the Cultural Equity Committee, and to pay for chair of that committee, like we paid for the chair of the Partners Committee to sit on this body. We built some discretionary money into the budget, so it's money that is not yet designated, because we want to leave for the new executive director some latitude to weigh in when they arrive on how money is being spent and priorities, and to work with you all towards those ends. So there's some money in the budget for that. There's a small amount of money for preliminary strategic planning costs. We are riding the coattails of our current strategic plan to the end of my tenure here, and it'll be time for someone new to be involved with that process. We've done sort of some of the preliminary expenses for something like that, paid for research and other things that is information that becomes at the basis of a strategic plan. But as far as someone to actually work to facilitate a plan and to act as a consultant, that is new money. And then with the exception of on-ramp central and local grants, cultural district program, creative aging grants, traditional arts Indiana, our homecoming governor's arts awards, and AOS and APS grants, all other programs that we had been running for several years are still in the pause mode. So things like our arts in the parks and state historic sites, our individual artist program, and some of our community level grants for presenting in visual arts and other things, all of those are still in the pause mode. Those are things that a new director could use that discretionary funds to unpause, or they may want to propose other uses of those funds. So that's what's kind of in the holding pattern. So that's the basis of the budget that we created. And if it's okay, I would have Maya go just through any of the comparatives between FY22, the new budget, and FY21, which is the budget we are currently in, just to do some highlights.
Sure. You will, Dan, if you go back a couple of slides, I just want to talk revenue for just a second, just so that you understand where the money's coming from. Yeah, thank you. You will see the state appropriation, as Louis mentioned, the state appropriation that we used to match the NEA grant with, and then our total state appropriation, and indicating the 2% reserve at $72,000. You'll see our FY21 National Endowment for the Arts grants, and just note, for inexplicable reasons, the NEA's grant year is always a year behind ours. So we go into FY22 with an FY21 NEA grant, which makes it really fun at the office sometimes. But anyway, so that's the year coming up, beginning July 1, that's $848,900. And then we are bringing over $191,894 from our current year award. We had some surplus, we're putting it toward this year's budget. I anticipate that will not be something that will be able to happen again, but we are in a situation that we're able to do that, and we're going to do that. And that helps create some space, as Louis mentioned, for some funds for a new executive director to have some opportunity to make an impact quickly. And that was a strategy to do that, to allow that to happen. That won't be something that we'll be able to do going forward. Then you'll also see, as Louis mentioned, our ARP grant funds at $842,600. Louis mentioned a little bit about how we'll be spending that going forward. And then you'll see a big number with a yellow circle around it, and that's our carry forward. So what that is essentially is grants that we have not yet paid out that carry over into the next fiscal year, some federal dollars that we carry over into the next fiscal year. That number is always balanced from the revenue and expense side because we're either holding it as a holdback or we've spent it. That number is high, and we have, it will, the next financial report you see, which will be for the next fiscal year, that holdback number will be considerably less because we've paid out quite a bit of money between when I put this together and this period. So anyway, but that number is always balanced. Again, it's super high right now. It will be significantly lower, but that's what that number means, just so that you know going forward. And then you'll see 5,000 we're drawing from the Cultural Trust. This past year, or this year that we're about to end, you may remember we drew 40,000 that we put toward our arts project support grants. We decided we'd be a little more modest going into FY22 and draw a little less. We're going to continue with the Arts Trust projects, which help provide visibility and hopefully drive sales for our Cultural Trust license plate, Arts Trust license plate. But it's a much less number. A smaller number, which again is our funds that are available for the commission to draw from the trust at some point for other uses down the road. And then you'll see we're drawing 30,000 from the Hoffman Trust, which is a trust that was established at the Brown County Community Foundation that helps support PACE in our education programming. And we're about to sunset that program, and so we are drawing a good bit out of the trust to help support that. So that's where the money comes from for this next year, totaling $7,041,918. Recognizing again that carryover number is going to be a little bit less going forward. So happy to answer any questions about what
I was
looks
just going
like?
to add a couple of things.
Sure.
Just to make sure you guys understand. So that $191,000, the National Endowment for the Arts, which is actually our current grant that we're bringing into next year. So over the last 5 years, both the state and the federal government used to be able to, with their permission, carry that over. That became sort of like a little bit of a savings account for us to hedge against, because we had some old money in old accounts that were not in a budget, and we could bring something into a budget. Well, both on the state side and the Fed said to the NEA, you can't do that with the states anymore, you know? So we have to expend that money now, but it also means that there are not those fallback monies anymore for the commission. So you're working much more in real time. One of the reasons that we did not take much out of the trust interest is because that is money that's there. I forget what's currently there, $190,000 or something in interest that could be drawn from there. That becomes, so as we've lost the ability for those backfed dollars, I've tried to not access much in the trust to build up a little reserve so that you all as trustees in emergency situations which arise have some latitude to manage and not, necessarily pass all pieces of bad news onto our grantees, right? So it gives you, but that's where your reserve there, and a bit in the Hoffman Trust, a bit in the community, Central Indiana Community Foundation, of interest on a private account that was set up for us there. That's where your reserve money is as an agency. So just sort of wanted you guys to understand that.
So Deanna, would you mind jumping forward to the 21-22 comparison, the nice chart that Bridget put together? Yeah, thank you. Again, this is just in chart form, essentially summarizing what we've talked about previously related to holdback, difference between FY21 and 22, cultural districts, our appropriation, the pandemic relief, and then again, as I mentioned, how we're drawing from the trust differently in FY22 and FY21. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about or share with you the point-by-point numbers for FY22. You have a beautiful sheet in your packet that has the comparison budget with the green column and the blue column. We didn't put that up on the screen, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has related to differences there. Some of that will be sort of talked through as Paige presents the grant cycle, because a lot of the changes are there, but happy to answer any questions about that comparison. But again, we will do sort of a top level by point expense review here in a few slides. So any questions about where we are so far? Okay, well, Louis, I'm going to pitch it back to you because I think you're talking about
history.
Yeah, history. Yeah.
I thought before you would pass a budget, you might like to see what the last decade, kind of how things have grown and et cetera with us. So you have sort of a frame of reference for decision making that has been made by you and your predecessors. So I'm going to step up to the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is our budget history. The rust colored line here is the federal appropriation. The blue line is our state appropriation. And then the gray line is actually our spendable amount of money. So the NA, you get money from, the state, we get money from, but then we get a reserve placed on it. So some of it is not spendable. And so the gray line is a combination of the rust line and the blue line minus the reserve that we have to pull back to the state is the gray line. So you'll see that our federal, our state appropriation has grown by about 22% in the last decade, which is good news. I mean, we've had some good advocacy, and the legislature has responded to the work that we're doing in the state. And we've had a series of, modest but good increases in most of the years that I've been here. We've had some bad news too. Anne brought me the bad news when she was in the governor's office, but we had
I wasn't in charge of money, but I did deliver the bad.
You're in charge of messaging.
Which was the best job ever, right? But anyhow, but that has grown. The everyday money, federal money, has been a plateau for many years. That really hasn't grown. There's some, this particular administration has some significant increase in the president's initial budget, but whether that holds in Congress or not, we'll have to see. We receive 40, the states collectively and the regional arts organizations receive 40% of the NEA's program dollars, and it's based on capita, basically how much your state gets. There's sort of a base plus per capita on top of it. And again, that hasn't changed. If we go to the next one, you'll see 3 years of our AOS awards, our APS awards, and total number of dollars awarded. And you can see that total dollars granted through the IAC's core programs as percent of actual budget has increased slightly over the last 10 years. It's gone up from 61 to 70%. And then the total dollars granted through the IAC's core programs has increased 33%. Total number of grants awarded has increased by 37%. That growth has been 20% of dollars in the AOS category and 39% increase in dollars in the APS. And 106% in APS. So we've had much more, even in our core programs. This does not include things like arts and parks or individual artist program or on-ramp or any of those things. This is just our AOS and APS awards, which we consider core. So we've had good growth, and we push more money out the door into, as a percentage, proportionate, onto the field. So we've become a bit more efficient, and we've really ramped up project grants. Everything has gone up disproportionately. It's been project grants, and that's partially because of our strategy to try to get more money into the more rural parts of our state, where project grants are the only kinds of grants that are awarded there, because arts organizations don't generally exist. Therefore, operating grants don't have any impact. So that sort of mirrors our efforts to get more and more money into the rural parts of our state, or with our partners to identify projects in those parts of the state, et cetera. So, I mean, I think that's mostly good news, right? That frames up where we come from and where we're going. But I thought this was in response to Anne's request to sort of have a lay of the land of what kind of decisions had been made in the past. So, any questions? Lori?
Yeah, I have just a general question that may just be ignorance of longer history with the state, but is it possible to chart this against kind of overall state budget? In other words, this is great, and I think particularly around, the way in which money has gone out the door. I mean, that's just a pure good news story, I think. But is there a question about whether we have fared neutrally, if you will, over this period with respect to other agencies, or have we in fact seen an increase? In other words, are the arts more of a priority for the state or less of a priority? Even though the money's gone up, are we still declining relative to other spending?
Yeah, so getting back to the reserve piece of it. So, the state has become more aggressive with the reserve, right? Because that interprets into our bond rating and a lot of things. So that was really instituted by Governor Daniels, right? He wanted to see that happen. So that's something that has accelerated. The other thing, again, I think I'm going to tell you that I think we fared better than most. Because the other thing that has been afoot is that Governor Daniels and Governor Holcomb have both implemented a strategy by where they take the spendable amount from the current year that you're in. So your appropriation minus the reserve, which is the spendable amount of state appropriations, and they utilize that as their starting recommendation for your appropriation in the subsequent cycle. So let's say I had $4 million, and with the reserve I had $3.6 million. Well, then their budget always starts with an appropriation of $3.6 million, for which, if it passes at that level, they apply another reserve to, and then it's a way of decreasing the size of government over time. But as you can see, our budget has actually gone up, even in the face of that strategy being there on a very consistent basis. Now, Governor Pence really didn't do that. His administration pretty much started with the past year's appropriation numbers, not minus the reserve. So he didn't use that strategy to reduce the size of government, but both Governors Holcomb and Governor Daniels have done that. So if you look at the last 10 years, you'll see that our budget has generally, there've been a couple of times that it hasn't, but generally increased even in the face of that reduction strategy that has been employed. So I don't have numbers for you, but I can tell you that that's.
Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
That helps.
Any other questions for Louis on this, or Maya on what has already been presented? Okay, we do need to.
So if we could, I'm sorry, Alan, I just want to go to the next slide quickly and just show you the expense, just what the expense piece. I've talked about the revenue piece. This is what the expense piece looks like. Referencing that beautiful sheet of paper that has the blue and green columns on it, that is a line by line, program by program expense document. All of those expenses roll up into what are commonly and lovingly known as points in state government budgeting. We get our money in two buckets. We get it in point 1, which is personnel. And then we get another bucket, which is points 2 through 9, which is everything else. And so you'll see, and as we report to you monthly or report to you quarterly, we always report by point so that you understand that. And again, we could spend a lot of time talking about how money flows, but money can flow down from point 1 down, but it can't flow up into point 1. So, so as Louis talks about how we budget point 1, obviously federal dollars come into play in that. So again, you'll see personnel benefits indicating the potential new position along with Louis's payout for retirement, along with other expenses there. Technology communication, consultancies, contracts, panelists, and capacity building, which is point 3. Our materials and supplies, point 4. Office equipment, point 5. Obviously, and then shared departmental operating expenses. We are charged by HR as well as IoT, as well as other units for shared services. And that's what that point is primarily. And then you will see the carry forward, which I talked about from the revenue side, which will change, but will always be balanced from the revenue side and the expense side. And then you will see 0.7, which is the grants, which we're about to talk about here in a second. And that includes not only the AOS, APS, cultural districts, but also the ARP grants, which aren't going to go out for a while still. And then that nets or that totals 741,918. So happy to answer any questions about the expense side of it. Again, you've got a detail in your packet, but that's what we look like for FY22.
Okay. Any questions on those? Go ahead. We need to go ahead then and approve the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented. Is there a motion?
To approve.
Second.
And Chad, second. Any further discussion? Stephanie?
Lisa,
Aye.
Alberta,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
Libby,
Aye.
Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Walter, Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey. Aye. Alan,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
Dusty,
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Cultural trust and other investments.
Yeah, so I'll just say, be super brief. I think you've got detail about the cultural trust plate sales in your packet. This is just sort of a top level look. Just as a reminder, the license plate sales go into the cultural trust, which is then invested by the treasurer's office, which yields income that the commission can draw for its use. And as a reminder, we drew 40,000 in the current year that's about to wrap up. We're planning to draw 5,000 for next fiscal year. We currently have 4 investment instruments. One is yielding an exciting 2.125%, which is amazing, but the rest are under 1%. But still, it's good. Our year-to-date annual interest accumulated so far is 30,000. The fund balance, of which we cannot touch, obviously it's the principal, we don't touch it, is almost 4 million. The total amount of interest available is 193,895 and some change. There have been several years in the past that we have not drawn any of the trust interest. So that is available, and there have been times certainly back, I think Louis reminded me during the recession, I think the commission drew larger amounts to sort of help bolster programming, but we've not had the need to do that. So
Which is a little higher than 2.
yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, it wasn't quite so painful to do it back then. Happy to answer any questions about the trust and sort of where we stand with investments. And
I don't want to mess up your numbers, but for my daughter's newer car to her, I'm getting a plate tomorrow. So if you need to-
yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I will write, no, you're right then.
Just a reminder, if commissioners want to play, we do have 2 series of numbers up to 100 for commissioners. So you could have like your favorite number, or maybe the number of your region on your license plate, or all sorts of things. So just think about it.
As long as you're not region 1, because somebody's got that one.
Some people have that.
Any questions other than mine? No. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, though. So Executive Director Contract Authorization, I had to ask what this is. Apparently we do it every year, so.
You want to approve the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, so can you take a break?
No one's paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah. It's next year, so you can just, you didn't really worry about it too much. Also less for all, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, well, you can explain what this is, or I can explain.
You all actually are the ones to sign any contract for the Arts Commission. And every year you have to give authority to the executive director to do that on behalf of the commission. So that's what this is.
So otherwise,
we renewed every year.
Every year, or Alberta has to drive down to Indy.
Sign 400 or 500 contracts. So probably don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So is there a motion to approve that authorization again for this coming year?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Stephanie?
Here we go. Lisa,
Aye.
Alberta,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Libby,
Aye.
Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Walter, Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey. Aye. Alan,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
Dusty.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, good for another one. You go ahead in this next section, talk about appointments, Louis.
Sure, we have reappointments, so folks that are finishing their first appointment round and are eligible for a second appointment. And those are all pending in front of the governor at the moment. That's Lori, Dave, Ann, and Walter. So I'm hoping to have news about that maybe very soon. So, and then of course we will have one vacancy as Alan finishes his second term. Well, officially today, but
Sorry. Oh my gosh.
But as we all know, in this appointment reappointment world, people continue to serve until they're replaced. That's actually, I think, in our enabling legislation. So unless you put your head behind the door like that, you're still serve until the governor gets around to it. So anyhow.
Thank you. That is fantastic. I love that.
Oh gosh.
That's how I'll attend the meetings, just kind of in the corner. And then we'll turn, I guess, to hard to follow that. Executive transition search. We had our executive session to start. I think, Alberta, I'll just kind of give a quick summary that we have pulled down the initial pool of applicants, which numbered over 35, around 35. There's now 12 in interview processes. The follow-up steps will then occur. We've kind of talked through that. Our hope is to have this done by the end of July. So Stephanie has been working so diligently, which we greatly appreciate. And at any rate, appreciate the committee's agreement to be involved, and they're making themselves available for interviews, which is a challenge, obviously, with everybody's calendars. But anyway, I think that's all. Anything else you want to add? Okay. Okay. Let's move on to Programs, Grants, and Services Committee report. Yeah. Let's see, Louis on the Direct Art. You want to?
I sort of already went through kind of a point, the first strange numbering, I suppose. There, points 1 and 1. I've also already gone through. I can go down to number 5, the state of Indiana, our funding inquiry. So I have approached the governor's office and said that we'd like to make a case for another round of the state's art funding that may yet be to be designated. Like the governor was great to give the cultural community $10 million of CARES money. Could we revisit that with this new round of funding? And so we are going to present them with a case for why we believe our sector would benefit from that at this juncture. So hopefully that will be, vetted seriously, along with a lot of other needs, obviously, that the state has. So we will be doing that. Also, number 6, for the art monies that are coming to us which are still part of this emergency funding in response to the COVID-19 situation in America. If you all recall, in Wabash, we made the motion, I think, to extend to the staff the ability to sort of craft these programs, make these grants without coming back to the commission for approval, because these funds have to be expended in certain timeframes, and it's basically emergency work. And we would like the ARP funds to have the same consideration that you gave to us for the CARES funds, that we can develop these programs. And if those things happen within the framework of our normal approval processes, great. And if they don't, we would have the authority to go ahead and act on them. So that would be something that we would need a motion to extend that consideration for the ARP funding.
Yep, so we'd be extending that authorization for them to do those things, and we'd still obviously have information we'd receive on it, but they'd be able to proceed as needed. Any questions about that or discussion? Okay, so is there a motion to extend that authorization?
Did you want to say anything about that? I saw sort of a little
No,
now thing there. And
I think I was considering a yawn. Thank you. You copy, man, you copy.
All right. Those up here are in college, considering a yawn.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Page stifled.
Okay. So we need a motion then to extend that authorization we established in Wabash for the staff to proceed with dealing with those funds. Is there a motion? Lori, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And a second. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey? Aye. Alan?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Dusty?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll look at the fiscal year 2022 grants for AOS and APS grants. We just need the approval there, I guess.
So I'll have Paige present those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in your materials, you have a lot of grants to approve all at one time. I just want to make a comment that if you have any questions at great length and want to chat with me about those, learn more about these programs in greater detail, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to provide that detail. And certainly if you have any questions today about the materials, feel free to ask. So in terms of this area, we're going to be looking for approval for our regional arts partners to continue to administer grants on our behalf and provide services in partnership with the Indiana Arts Commission. And we're recommending to fund 391 organizations representing both the Arts Organization Support Program and the Arts Project Support Program that represent all 11 regions in our state, which totals around just over $3 million, which does include 52 of the merit recommendations. And the recommendations for merit were made under the guidance of the programs, grants, and services. So that is the action that we have under that particular section. But then we're also asking for approval for AOS grantees to be on 2-year funding. And what that means is we're recommending that 224 out of the 226 organizations that are recommended for funding, they're also recommended to be on 2 years. And that was based upon the resiliency assessment that we put together that's illustrated in your packet as well. So it's a pretty thorough point scale, and it also took in consideration the panel reviews. 2 years simply means that they will not have to submit a full application in FY23, but it does mean that they still will be submitting the final report as well as a second year plan. And when that's accepted, then they'll be eligible for that second year of funding. We're also recommending, based upon that assessment, to do a more enriched final report for certain organizations. That just means some additional information that we'll be requesting. And that would be for the 17 first-time applicants that we've had to this category, since we did have a streamlined application, as well as for those folks that had a little higher of a risk score, of which were there 8, some additional questions to make sure that they're in good shape to move forward. And there were 4 that were flagged with concerns by the regional arts partners. So we would add a few additional questions for them as well. So those are the 2 areas that we're looking for an action for approval, which is the funding recommendations, as well as the 2-year funding recommendation that we have for y'all.
So just a clarification to make sure you guys understand. The merit awards, the $1,000 merit awards, were based on the paneling scores of the panels that review the applications. The Programs, Grants, and Service Committee helped us focus about how many awards we're going to give in the state, what score you had to be above, and what the level of an award might be to be significant. So they are based on the panelist scores, but Programs, Grants, and Services helped us to kind of decide how far that money should go and how good you have to be to get it. So, just to clarify that, and Paige did this clearly, but just make sure that you understand when you approve this year's grants, you even though these folks will not have to apply again in the second year of the cycle, they are only being approved for this year's grant award. I mean, you're not approving that amount of money for the second year for them. It's only this year. You're only approving this year's budget, and therefore you cannot approve a budget in a year that you don't have, or a grant for a year in a budget that you haven't approved yet. So just making sure that you understand that.
What questions do you have for Paige or anyone else on these? Okay, so on the numbers here, I'd like to go ahead and have a motion for the approval of the 391 AOS and APS grants, along with the 2-year funding exception as described by Paige, which is 224 out of 226 recipients. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Stephanie?
Thank you. Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey? Aye. Alan?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Dusty?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Just a note to think about that. How many recipients are getting funds through this process and how much work went into that? So a big thank you to everyone who was involved, staff and panels and everyone else. That's a big deal. So thank you very much. Referred items for action? Yep.
That would be me too. And it looks like this is going to be a package deal as well, right? Okay. So I'm going to talk about first the cultural district designations, and these communities went through a pretty robust program, the Creative Community Pathway Program that Anna runs. It just does an incredible job, just great work on there. And we're pleased to recommend today 2 cultural districts for statewide designation. They went through that thorough process as well as the panel review. And that is the Arts Campus of Fort Wayne and the Wabash Cultural District. And the 2 other communities, Goshen and Kokomo, they will still maintain their Spotlight Community designation. So those are the 2 that we're recommending today. Any questions about that? They'll be very excited to hear that they will be recommended. The next area is PACE, which is Partnering Arts Communities in Education, and the grant approval for that. And this is going to be going into its final year. I think Maya had mentioned that earlier. And we're going to that final year with Honeywell Foundation and the Carnegie Center for Art and History. And the grant awards that we're looking to fund is $7,000 for each. However, given this application process and school year, does not align with the commission meeting schedule. So we're recommending that the commission defer PACE grant acceptance and payment decision to the PACE Advisory Committee, of which Ruth Ann serves. So we're asking for that as well today. Any questions on that? Okay. And then the final area, and I think one's truly exciting, is the Creative Aging Program Guidelines. So this is the Lifelong Arts Indiana program that Stephanie Haynes has put together. We had received funding from to provide this program, so we're excited about that. And this is very similar to OnRamp in that it has a learning module, coaching component, as well as the fellowship, so they can take what they learned and put it into action. So we're looking for approval of those guidelines today as well. Any questions about the Lifelong program?
Creative Aging
What?
That's the,
No, I'm mumbling. I'm sorry. I was just thinking out loud. Sorry. I don't know if I'm creatively aging. That was going to be my next.
We have the program for you, Dusty.
any questions before we move for approval of these? Okay, I think
Dave Heist, one quick question. I'm on the board of Arts United in Fort Wayne and Honeywell in Wabash. Do I need to abstain from these?
I'm sure you're also on the grant list for the general grant as well. So we've done in the past, if you have an interest in a specific grantee, as long as that it is presented as a group of organizations and not a decision specifically just about one organization, that you're allowed to vote for that. So even though this is only 2 organizations, right, in the PACE program at the moment, Dave, I think based on prior precedents, we would always allow, unless it would be, just the Honeywell Center, then you probably would not. But as long as you're just approving those in the program, I think that's probably okay.
And Louis, you're comfortable also on the arts designation, arts campus.
Right.
Okay.
They're also considered a group or a slate. So I think we're going to have to break these up into a couple votes because the action on PACE is a little different than just an approval of the grants. So what I would suggest is that there be a motion first for the approval of the cultural district designations as indicated, which is Fort Wayne and
Wabash.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Stephanie?
Thank you. Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey? Aye. Alan?
Aye.
Sophia? Dusty?
Aye.
And Ann.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then on the sheet related to PACE, I guess we actually are approving these allocations and then the action. Is that right?
So you're approving the allocations and then you're allowing the committee to actually release the funds upon an appropriate plan by those entities to use the funds. That's kind of what you're doing.
So that's the approval of Honeywell Foundation Region 4 and Carnegie Center for Art and History Region 12, 7,000 each, and the authorization then to the committee to release those funds. Is there a motion to that extent?
So moved.
Thanks, Rick.
Second.
Stephanie?
Okay. Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey. Aye. Alan.
Aye.
Sophia.
Aye.
Dusty.
Aye.
And
Aye.
motion carries.
Yeah, make sure that you hold it. Yeah, I was thinking about doing that. Okay. Okay, and then the final thing we need to approve is the 2021 Lifelong Arts Indiana Guidelines for Creative Aging Artistic Program, or Development Program. Is there a motion for that approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Dave.
Second.
Jake, thank you. Oh, was it Jake or Walt?
That's Jake.
Jake, thank you. Stephanie?
Lisa.
Aye.
Alberta.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Libby.
Aye.
Ruth Ann.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Greg.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Jake.
Aye.
Kelsey. Aye. Alan.
Aye.
Sophia.
Sort of do those.
Aye.
Yeah, we don't have any
Dusty.
actions on these. right?
Aye.
And
Aye.
motion
Yeah.
carries.
Thank you.
Alan, just a quick question. It's
Please.
not relative to the vote, which I'm fully in favor of this, but it's, this sparked something which it has to do with how we create programs like this and make them available to non-native English speakers. Are we doing promotion of this in other languages? Are we thinking about other communities? And maybe that's a question about a lot of things that we do. So I will just leave it as a question for thinking about going forward, not just the creative aging one, but.
So it's a good, I mean, maybe somebody can summarize, because I do think it kind of comes up in the general programming. How do we handle that, or how is that accessible when?
So we've kind of tried to, we've done some things, but it's kind of been on a program by program basis. So just a big homecoming around that. So it's not as deliberate probably as it should be yet, but we do some work around it. But where we think it's important that we would have that community to access something. But it's a great point, Lori, that it probably needs to be more ubiquitous and more deliberate than it currently is.
Yeah, and it's a piece of diversity, it's accessibility, it's all that. So I just wanted to register.
Yeah, no, certainly good, and something to be aware of moving forward with, programming, obviously, that's a great point. So we will finish these next items, 1 through 4 on the brief program reports, and then we'll take about a 5-minute break, or, and then we'll get back to the rest of the agenda. So Paige and Maya, whoever wants to start on the shuttered venue, Maya, you're gonna start, I guess, on the shuttered venue operators, federal grants.
Sure. You may have heard the Small Business Administration has launched the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program to much fanfare and a lot of crashed websites and challenges relating to getting the program up and off the ground. Last I checked, they are still moving sort of through first priority grantees. Last I looked, Indiana only had 3 grantees that had been approved. And that frankly was fairly common amongst states of Indiana's size. SBA has pledged that they've hired more people. They're gonna work harder to process applications. And just as a quick summary, the Shuttered Venue Grant is for venue operators, for-profit and not-for-profit, as well as performing arts organizations, and in some cases, agents or representatives of performing arts groups, recognizing that they were particularly hard hit by the pandemic. So this federal program, $17 gazillion in it. According to SBA, they're not even close to sort of hitting the bottom of the well related to the money that's been applied for thus far. They've been very slow getting dollars out. So we continue to monitor it. I will give a shout out to Americans for the Arts, who has done an amazing job of sort of staying on SBA's case, for really no nice way to say it, making sure that they are accountable, that they're making the process changes they need to make to help get these organizations and individuals relief. So I think at the end of the day, we'll have a healthy number of organizations and venues, for-profit and not-for-profit, represented in what is finally done. But it's an ongoing issue. And a shout out Indianapolis has put together an independent venue association that's been very active in helping get the word out, not just in Indianapolis, but statewide. So anyway, fingers crossed, but they pledged to get most of the money out, approvals out by the end of July. So fingers crossed.
And the only marker that we know at all about how many Indiana organizations may have applied to this is I was on a call. Arts Council of Indianapolis hosts a bi-weekly arts administrators call, and they did sort of just a little straw poll of everyone online, which are not all venue operators, because some of them are not, but of everyone who was on that day, about a quarter of them had applied for these funds. So I think that and I would think maybe a third of them would actually qualify or something. So I think the amount that are actually making the application is pretty robust. As Maya said, there's $17 billion or $1.7 billion in this program. So it's a lot of money, and people know that. And so I think it's pretty appealing. So
I just checked the dashboard because they update the dashboard on the SVOG site, and we've gone from 3 grants to 14. So we're moving on up. So anyway, SBA is reporting that. So that's the only way we've got to keep tabs on that ongoing. So
Indiana Arts Homecoming.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. So we have our Indiana Arts Homecoming coming up the 13th, 14th, and 15th of October, and it is focused on arts learning in all of its forms. So Kelsey is on our steering committee, which just met recently to review 54 proposals that came in. So we have like 16 session slots. So, and then some creative slots and things like that, but it was incredible response. So it's a very engaged committee. They're very passionate, and they're very chatty, which was great. There's so much wonderful feedback about the proposals, which was wonderful. So a great dialogue for the potential keynotes. We are hoping to have the second keynote in person, so fingers crossed on that front. We haven't heard from, can I say who it is? No, I shouldn't. Anyway, so once we hear back we haven't heard from anyone. Not yet, so we may have to send some special recruits to come in and chat with those individuals. But in any event, we hope to have it in person, so then we can have a reception following, so everybody can celebrate, getting back together, which is really a big deal for our field in particular. It's a big part of our world is getting together in communities. So excited about that. We're really excited about the homecoming this year, and really appreciate Kelsey being on the committee and helping usher that forward. And we're looking forward to working with you more on that. And then I'm happy to go right into the on-ramp. Has anybody any questions about homecoming? Okay, cool. So on-ramp is just such an incredible program, and we were really blessed with the Indiana Small Business Development Center to truly believe in this program and contributing $200,000 so we could extend it out across the state and really help artists who were hit pretty hard with COVID. And this was the intention of this program expansion, was to really help. So we had the on-ramp cohort in person in Lafayette. It went incredibly well. It's just a magical experience. I think Anna is it's amazing. They have them get their certificates at the end, and they have this procession line, and they go up and everybody's like clapping for them. And it's just the coolest thing. There's so much energy. And that's really important when you're moving forward in your creative career, to have people that really believe in you. So that's extending out to across the state, and those local community members that are driving that in their communities, they watched it. They got to learn. So our on-ramp central became that learning lab. So they're able to come in and see what that looks like so they can really emulate it in their communities this summer. So they're going to be doing workshops here one in July, and I think the majority in August. And that's going to be in 5 communities. They had their fellowship deadline for Central. So I think only one didn't make the deadline. So they're going to go into action, but it happens. And then we have the deadline coming up for the cohorts to do the workshops on the local level. So we're looking at around over 100 artists are going to be highly impacted to help advance their creative career. So excited about that, clearly. I think you can tell by my voice. Any questions about on-ramp? That I will immediately defer to Anna if there are. Great.
Great, thank you. And then veterans?
And then veterans, so Stephanie Haynes has just done great work here, and we just have such a magical team, truly. So the National Endowment for the Arts has a Creative Forces program, and they are currently paying for art therapists to help in partnership with the Veterans Administration to provide services to veterans in the state. So we have been developing a partnership and relationship with them to extend the relationships of veterans that work with them into the community so they can continue that creative therapeutic power. And we've developed a webinar series and around connecting veterans and communities. It's been incredibly well received. People are really interested in helping veterans, and arts can be extremely cathartic, and there's a lot of interest out there to help. So we're looking forward to deepening that partnership, and hopefully soon we're looking to potentially develop a proposal to help support those efforts around the state. This is just in its very infant sort of stage, so there will be more on that front later, because there's clearly a great deal of passion and interest in driving this forward in some way. That's what I have for veterans, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Okay, we're gonna, right at this spot, we'll take a break, 5 or 6 minutes, and then be back, and we'll pick up with the committee on the future report. God.
That's so creepy. I need a snack. I always forget. I have a snack shop if you're hungry at all.
Liz, you want to start that?
Well, I'm going to hand it over to Sally if she is still with us, and she is still with us. Let's make Sally bigger.
I can only imagine. Am I now a large face in the conference room?
So as you recall, Sally was one of the folks who took the lead as a citizen on helping move forward sort of a more organized advocacy effort in our state and do some coaching on our behalf in the state. And so, Sally, take it away.
Thank you so much. And I just want to start by thanking the staff leadership for the initiative that you all took at the beginning of 2020 to focus on advocacy work. Louis, Maya, Paige, Bridget, we would not have been able to accomplish what we did without you. So thanks. First, a definition. What is advocacy? Honestly, it's simply strategic communications with elected officials. And I always point out to budding advocates that it's actually our responsibility as citizens, each one of us, to reach out to legislators and let them know about their issues, about our issues. It's actually their job to listen. So what did we do over the last year and a half? First, we worked closely with Senator Ron Grooms from Jeffersonville and assembled a group of 12 arts leaders from around the state to serve as a steering committee for our work. And of course, several current and former commissioners served on this group. Big thanks to Dave and Ruth Ann for their excellent work as advocates. We then partnered those 12 arts leaders with individual state legislators who had also agreed to serve on a legislative arts advocacy group that Ron Grooms chaired. So Terry Whit-Bailey from Muncie and I served as consultants from March 2020 to May 2021 to oversee this work. We facilitated sessions at the Indiana Arts Homecoming. We convened this group of 12 several times. We collaborated with Senator Grooms and the group of legislators. We developed messaging and created a website. Ultimately, we recruited grassroots advocates from around the state with the help and assistance of the regional arts partners and cultural district leaders. And we provided these advocates with training to enable them to talk effectively with their state representatives about the importance of state funding for the arts to their communities. And we got results. We got the original 15% budget reduction reduced by half, as you know. Sorry to learn this morning about the additional 2% reserve, but that's life. So we are now focusing on what comes next. How might we raise funds to be able to continue statewide advocacy efforts? In my decades of working on advocacy, I am a firm believer that we need an independent, statewide, professionally staffed organization. So how do we fund that? Can we hire a lobbyist? Perhaps a partnership with Arts Midwest? There are many questions. I'm happy to serve, to continue to serve as an occasional advisor for these efforts, and wish you all well in the future. One thing to close on is that, advocacy doesn't just happen once every 2 years with the state budget, but it needs to be ongoing. And it certainly starts with the commissioners to be effective advocates with your own state legislators. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sally? Well, say I got to sit in on those and be involved, and Sally and Terry Whit-Bailey did so much hard work and really gave us good guidance along with Ron and a number of other legislators. And it really, as she said, there were results. So it does make a difference that we share that information with those folks just on the regular, because when we see them, we ought to mention that we really appreciate what they do for the state and what the arts means to the state. So no other questions, and we'll move on to Bridget, communications.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to take a little time to talk to you guys about our plans regarding the Arts Organization Support Merit Award recipients and how we plan to share their stories and recognize their dedication to providing public benefit last year and their innovation. There are 52, as you already know, each are receiving an additional $1,000 from the Arts Commission, and like Lewis mentioned, those were paneled. I wanted to share, beyond just telling you that we're building this plane as we're flying it, right? I wanted to share a few stories just to show you what you're voting on, right? And why this is so important. So one of the Merit Award recipients, Heartland Artists, they worked with a neighborhood center that helps people living below the poverty line on a photography exhibit with their clients to illustrate the challenges that many of their community members were facing, particularly during the pandemic. Another example of a Merit Award recipient comes from Evansville, Indiana. The Evansville Philharmonic Orchestral Corporation held a World War II Pops concert in an airplane hangar that serves as a World War II museum. The orchestra was able to provide a safe, socially distanced performance for the community. So again, just wanted to let you guys know a few examples. We'll be making a public announcement of who those 52 recipients were on July 12th, but just wanted to give you a sneak preview to show you these are really innovative folks, and your fundings and voting to fund some really important things in our state. So next up, if that's okay, if I move forward, you guys have any questions about merit?
Bridget, how will it be like a single release that goes out, or what's the communication support for that announcement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're giving ourselves until July 12th to make that public announcement so that we can work with the recipients, right, and make sure we're telling their stories appropriately. They wrote us a narrative in their grant application, but we just want to touch base again and congratulate them on their success and work with them to make the announcement. So we anticipate making the Merit and the Arts Trust license plate project announcement in conjunction with the general arts organization support, arts project support announcement, and just highlighting these two as really exemplary projects and organizations in our state. And then we'll be working with them throughout the year to continue building. There are between merit awards and project recipients that are designated from the cultural or the arts trust rather. There are about 100 of those going around. So it's tough for two of us to manage. And I'm excited to introduce you to my new colleague here later. But we're going to start with one from each region to begin with some serious in-depth storytelling, and then expand as time allows. But that's kind of our starting place, one from each region for both organization and merit to really tell the story of what's going on in our state.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Arts Trust project. So as Maya had mentioned, these folks, they're arts project support grant recipients, regular grant recipients, and we choose beneficiaries for the Arts Trust license plate project. We select them based on their commitment to their community, to education, to the economy, and to health. So again, I wanted to share examples of what exactly we mean by that. So the Dearborn County Citizens Against Substance Abuse will use their arts project support grant to hire an artist to facilitate the creation of ceramic totems by members of the community who are in substance abuse recovery following incarceration and intensive treatment. Another example comes to us from Jeffersonville. The Greater Clark County Schools in Jeffersonville will use an arts project support grant to implement an arts integration module around studying famous scientists. So just to give you, although not a face, but at least a story to the decisions you're making, and looking forward to working with these grant recipients, and there are hundreds of them like them, over the next 2 weeks to be able to put a face to the decisions that you're making today. So happy to answer any questions about the trust or how those folks were selected.
And then we need to approve these, correct?
You do need to approve the trust, folks. Yeah, you haven't done that yet.
So any questions on the proposed fiscal year 22 Arts Trust license plate projects? How many were there total?
They're a little over 50.
Yeah. All right, no questions. Is there a motion to approve those projects?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, this motion and a second. Stephanie?
Lisa,
Aye.
Alberta,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
Libby,
Aye.
Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey. Aye. Alan,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
Dusty,
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and anything on other communications?
Yeah, just one thing. Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to introduce all of you now to my new colleague, Connie Braun. Say hi, Connie. Hi, everybody. Connie is our new communications and community engagement manager, and she's been working on everything with me, but I wanted to give her a moment to talk a little bit about panelist engagement. We spoke about our panelists and the importance of them earlier, as you can see on this slide. In April, 167 Hoosiers reviewed nearly 600 applications from us. How do we show appreciation for them? Connie?
Yeah, thank you all. So something that Bridget and I have been talking about in partnership with the programs team and with the regional arts partners after this year's panel review process is how do we stay engaged with these panelists throughout the year and help them see the important work that they're doing, not just in the months of panel review, but see it play out and show our appreciation. And another piece of that is that we don't have a lot of touchstones with them because the regional arts partners have the stronger relationship and form those connections. So one idea that we would like to bring to you and ask your help in is reaching out to some selected panelists to write thank you notes. These panelists have been identified by the regional arts partners as panelists who went above and beyond and who are really making some big moves in their communities and helping support the arts. So what we did was reach out to those regional arts partners, and they were very, very excited at the prospect of having commissioners reach out to these panelists. So before you leave today, I do have just a list of just 2 or 3 panelists from around the state, either in your region or potentially close by, or even if you were a facilitator for some of those who were, that may have even been in your panels. And so we're just gonna ask you to reach out to them from the commission to thank them for the great work that they do and the great work that they've enabled, as we've seen from the presentations from the programs team. So I will bring those by, and for those that aren't in the room today, we'll be sending those your way. And please feel free to reach out with any questions about that process as well. But it's so good to meet you all, and looking forward to working with you more.
Thanks, Connie. Welcome. Thanks, Bridget. And great idea. I think reaching out and thanking, just looking at that number of people who are willing to step up and help this process is really amazing. So thanks. All right, well, we'll turn to strategic planning update, Louis.
Just want to lead into Jamal's presentation here by talking a little bit about, our plans for a cultural equity advisory committee and the formation of that. And that is something that we are going to have informed, obviously, by some of Jamal's work. We have also met with Kara Herring, who's our equity officer for the state of Indiana now. As a matter of fact, Kara is hoping to stop by to say hello here at the very end of the meeting, if she can today. Kara's in the process of hiring some staff. She's got a very new position, and one of the things that she has for her senior deputy is to be involved in the processes and the structure by which these kind of committees form across state government, not only in the Arts Commission, but in other agencies as well. So some guidance and some input from the sort of the bigger picture for the state as well. So we're trying to bring a few threads together in time to do this. So we're hoping that we might, by September's commission meeting, if we can hold to those things, actually have sort of a recommended structure, job description, and maybe even a list of potential members for a committee such as that. Tapping again into Kara's help, as well as Jamal and others, to help us articulate that. So that's kind of where that sits. So we don't really have it more articulated for you today because we still needed some pieces to come together in order to do that. But without further ado, Jamal, I think most of you saw virtually. Is it the last commission meeting or the one before that? I can't even remember now. Perhaps the one before the last commission meeting. Jamal, in last calendar year, had done 3 focus groups in the South Bend Gary area, Evansville, and Indy. We wanted to extend the reach of those to some really kind of some at least smaller communities too, as well as something more rural. Obviously, those 3 were primarily with communities of color in those 3 areas. And then Jamal took Fort Wayne and Muncie and Paoli. And you can imagine that the first 2 were with communities of color, primarily in Muncie and in Fort Wayne. But Paoli was really just with a rural community to talk about the same sort of issues that they have in accessing our services and us being relevant to their communities and the things that they value. So Jamal has some report about the 3 new sites, as well as how they related to the 3 original sites and those findings. So Jamal, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Louis. By training, I feel compelled to like say something. And then I also have kind of this monotone voice that tends to get lost. So I think standing just helps. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. It's great to see you guys in person. The virtual thing is tends to be cool, but I'm a hugger and a handshake. So, I'll walk you through. I won't go through all 25, 30 pages because that would put you to sleep. But we'll touch on some of the highlights. And as Louis pointed out, we want to make a correlation between the work we did in 2020 in connection to what we did here this first and second quarter. So as was mentioned, for this round, there was Fort Wayne, there was Muncie, and then the focus was Paoli, but I think the point was the rural communities within Indiana. And so we had some folks from Greenfield actually represented in the discussions as well, and who had some really good commentary about their community and what they wanted to see from government in general, but from the Arts Commission as well. I will say, because equity and inclusion is more than just a black and white thing, we were really intentional about what we included in this group of session. So in particular in the Fort Wayne space, we had some representatives from the disabled community, which I thought really gave some, they shared some really good context and light on the notion of access and what that meant. So that was a really good spin. I appreciated that feedback. I will also note that this time around was a little more difficult, right? I think, well, let me kind of touch on some of the nuanced differences between the first session and this session. One was there was a big focus on race in terms of equity and inclusion on the first session. And as you can imagine, right, we were right on the heels of George Floyd. There was a lot of racial tension happening. And so the feedback we got from folks within those listening sessions really reflected that energy, if you will. You can tell in this case, there was still a theme there, and racism and race, by all means, obviously has not gone anywhere, but the emotion and the energy there was a little different. And you can tell that just, I think, in your everyday walk as you talk to folks. It's not the same energy you had this time last year because of what was going on. So I think that was important to know. The other piece was last year at this time, obviously, everything was virtual, right? And so that was kind of like the rule of thumb, and everybody understood it. So when we were reaching out to set up the listening sessions, it just was what it was. And so everybody was like, okay, Jamal, 2 hours. I'm stuck in the house anyway. I can't go anywhere. I'm game. Sign me up. Whereas for this session, we've been kind of transitioning out of the pandemic. We're in this transition between some virtual, some in person. And then in the greater sense, people feel like they've been on punishment for a year and a half. So I just got off punishment, man. You pinning me down for 2 hours just does not feel good. So it was harder to get people to commit to the 2 hours. So we found ourselves, instead of doing, a session per, we had to do a couple of iterations to make sure that we got enough feedback and information. So I think those things are important. Let me walk through some of the factors. Who's controlling it? So just roll with me here. So again, Muncie, Fort Wayne, and then I'll just say rural Indiana was our targets for this one. Paoli being one of the focal points, and like I said, Greenfield. I'll also say, in the midst of us reaching out to folks for the listening session, I know you guys are the Arts Commission, but we were really intentional about making sure there weren't a lot of art people in the sessions. We wanted a variety of backgrounds, professional backgrounds. And so we had healthcare workers, we had, actually, that was a really big contingency of healthcare workers, whether physical therapists or nurses, et cetera. So that was good. We had some educators, we had some retired folks, we had some attorneys, just a plethora of folks from a variety of different professional backgrounds. And then we obviously tied the theme to art and the importance of art as it relates not just to their communities, but what they do professionally. So you got a sense from some of the feedback how they felt that that art impacted them personally as well as professionally, which I thought was really, really helpful in terms of the context of the feedback we got. Some of those themes that popped up, and here's the thing to note too, I was just talking to Lewis about this. The themes were eerily similar to what we received in the first session, almost identical. The only difference is, in particular for the rural listening sessions, it was the why, right? The why was different. So for example, access is probably the most reoccurring theme you find in these conversations, right? And that need for access manifests itself in a number of different ways. As we talk about, or through the lens of the racial space, it's we don't have access to the greater good. We don't have we'll talk a little bit about social capital here as well, which is a reoccurring thing, but that access or the lack thereof is a reason why we don't have the resources, the reason why we don't have the opportunities. And I'll say it points back to the environment we come from, or, because we are Black or Latino, because we are in a social economically deprived part of our community, et cetera. The role, listening participants would say it's because we're remote and the big bad people in Indianapolis don't care about us in our remote spaces, right? We're disconnected. So that access, and I was joking with Lou with some of the comments where we don't know the executive director of the Indiana Arts Commission. I mean, if we did, that access would provide us some of these resources that you say are out there. And in each one of the conversations, we kind of divert to this discussion about how does policy and or government support your community, and how does art play into that space? And that's really when those types of conversations about access really manifested itself. We don't know fill in the blank person who is the chief authorizer of said resources and funds. And if we did, then we would have them, right? So that's important to note. Access was still present. The reasons why we felt that we didn't have that access and was the difference in that manifested. So capital and resource was probably second, again, similar to the first session. We need more financing. We need more support, more resources, more money, human capital, financial capital, et cetera. Common theme there was really no difference in why. It was just flat out, if we had more money, we do more and have more. The third was kind of this sense of social capital, right? Which is, to me, one of the lost elements of access out there. I talk about this when we're talking about young people too, in particular young people from urban settings. So the adage, right? It's not what you know, but who you know that matters. It sounds cliche, but that is so true. And if you come from an environment where no one in my home was a doctor or an attorney or an executive, then it's highly unlikely that you have those connections, that you have opportunities at a young age for internships and things of that nature. this was a reoccurring theme. So even as an adult in the space, especially some of the, there was a young lady in the Muncie space who ran a homeless shelter. Well, she was the director of one of the homeless shelters. And that was something she beat on consistently. Like we would turn to another point and she would bring us right back to the fact that if we had the access, that capital, that social capital, then we'd be a phone call away from getting what we need for the people in our community. That was a really big recurring theme and something that I think everyone should really keep at the forefront of their efforts when looking to address equity. Similar to that was that cultural connection and so in every community there is, whether big or small, some sort of an event that happens. And that event, whether it's a festival, it could be a carnival, it could be an art show. One of the folks who mentioned a healthcare. Every year they have this health symposium where folks come out and they can get testing and they can get all these health screenings, et cetera. That was something folks look forward to every year, right? And it's grown in their mind, it's grown. But I said, well, how many people? Oh, you got about 500 people. Like, so that's a big deal, right? But it's in their community and it's important to the culture and the things that are happening in that space. Well, in those elements, and what we mean by the cultural connection is being connected, one, being aware that those things are happening creates an avenue and an opportunity for you to plug in, right? Plug in their respective space where folks are comfortable. This is, where they are. And in their mind's eye, if you take the effort to come and be a part of this, and a part of you cares about what's happening in our space. It's not like you are in reverse telling us we have to come do what you do, but you care about what's happening in our community. So that cultural connection is really important as well. Communication support was another recurring theme. Similar to last time, it's how do we know what's happening, right? If we're not in Indianapolis, connected to whatever government agency we're talking about, how do we know, what's going on? Or if, and here is a misconception too, right? Is that even in places like Muncie, who has a fairly, Fort Wayne's got a fairly decent infrastructure, right? Corporate and economic infrastructure. And they have, big foundations and things that are there too. But I think the idea is that those foundations have a great connection to the community. Folks that we're talking about community say, that's not true. We know that they're there, but they never come to our health symposium. We never see them. So the assumption that, your resources from the state trickle down through that identified big organization that we give big chunks of funding to, because, why wouldn't they be connected to the community? It's a high chance that they're not, right? And so we need to be conscious and being intentional about ensuring that they are actually making the efforts to be connected to those communities in the smallest pockets, if we actually say we care about the small pockets, because the small pockets are yelling and screaming, whether we hear them or not. So that was their notion there. Concerning about, and this is one that pops up, and in the conversations, they weren't lengthy, but when they popped up, there's a lot of emotion tied to defunding school. It's like a scab for folks when you talk about how schools or extracurricular programs are being defunded. Now, culturally, when you mention kind of the urban setting and the race piece, they'll say, look, culturally, art is a part of the Black community. Not just from it's literally a piece of what we do. The rhythm of how the Black community moves is embedded in art. And so if you remove that opportunity for young people, you are in essence kind of stripping the culture of how we move and how we operate. And if we are, and our young people through their schools are kind of dependent on that funding being there, what's our alternative, right? And so it wasn't an hour's length of the conversation, but when it, for the 5-10 minutes that it was in, it was like this moment, right? It wasn't a lot of little friendly banter. This is a serious moment. So I think the school funding in particular for the arts, and not that, some of the authority extends well beyond even this commission, but that's something to really, really keep in mind. community is listening to that. And even when we're having the conversations in the rural space, they're saying the same things. Like, look, it's important for our kids to have that access and that exposure. And they'll kind of revert back and say, I mean, we don't, we're kind of in this space of isolation anyway. We're not getting as much as we should. And even in the little bit we get, you're defunding our young people. So that sucks. Okay? So that's important to keep in mind. Talked about the arts contribution to the population and keeping retention. That was more of a business economic piece. We heard that more in the urban setting when it was ultimately, the art, which is an interesting concept. Art is a great way to draw people to your city and to keep people in your city. But in doing so, you need to make sure that art is reflected in as many diverse and cultural ways as you can. So if it only speaks to one set of people, that's all you can get. So you're limiting that. So being conscious about, one, the impact that art can have on economic development, and two, ensuring that that economic development through that lens has a sense of diversity and inclusion connected to it. Intentional engagement was important. This and kind of goes back to, remember I said the misconception that, the government agency says, hey, big nonprofit who we know well, as lobbyists and all these big things, we'll fund you because, we're sure that you are taking care of the respective communities. And that may not necessarily be the case. So that intentional engagement is what that speaks to, being conscious about if in fact you're going to go through that, that's the model, then whomever that large organization is, and large is relative, but whoever that large organization is, you need to ensure that they are being intentional about their engagement and making sure that they're in the pockets and crannies of their respective community. A strategic network of connected people, this ties to that previous comment. One of the, and we'll get into the it's part of the recommendation. So one of the things that was brought up was, so we would follow up when folks would make that comment. Big organizations, we know them, but they don't know us. They don't come here. Well, how do you assume that we solve that? Like, what's your suggestion? Well, someone from our community needs to be connected, right? They need to know that we're here, even if it's through kind of our proxy. So having that intention, that connection was, and we heard that in two of the spaces, in the rural setting and in the Muncie space, really mentioned having someone. And that representative or that connected person doesn't necessarily have to be the arts representative, the director of some arts program. It could be clergy, right? Faith-based leader. It could be, in fact, in the Muncie space, they kept mentioning this this young lady who runs a food pantry out of her house, and she cooks meals and literally hands them out to folks. But everybody in the community knows who she is. She has nothing to do, at least directly, with art, right? But she's the one, and so people will start giving flyers to her to disseminate to people who she's giving food to. So, for example, if there was a block party happening, they would take it to Ms. Johnson as she's giving out the plates, would say, hey, hand this flyer out with the plates. And so that's how they would get information out. If there was, and they mentioned the vaccinations is where they were using her here recently, where they're trying to promote vaccinations for everyone so folks can go get vaccinated and the education therein. So they would take these flyers to Mrs. Johnson. So as she's cooking the meals and handing out the plates, Ms. Johnson, hand out this information, these flyers about vaccinations, and they said it went well. But the point was, she was the community connection. I don't get the sense that Mrs. Johnson was overly educated. I don't get the sense that Mrs. Johnson was overly connected. Like, I don't know if she ever held some big fancy title, but everyone in her community knew who she was, and she was doing really great work. So that intentional connection, I think, is important. And then one that popped up in the urban spaces more than anywhere else was this notion of creating an independent art education programs to offset the lack of resources. So this is kind of circle back to the school piece. If our schools are going to continue to be defunded, how do we offset that by having someone who focuses on funding them, right? That was now, again, not really sure how that looks or how that works, but I think the point here is that the idea that schools are being defunded specifically in that area is of great concern for all parties involved, at least the folks we're talking to. targeted engagement, reoccurring theme, forums to engage, collaboration amongst community leaders. Part of that was this sense like the Ms. Johnsons of the world, is having her hand out flyers is one thing, making sure that she's actually aware of and educated on what she's handing out and what's happening so how do you take that connected person and make sure they have the resources, knowledge they need, right, to disseminate the education or disseminate the information to the people in the community as she's handing out, for example, the food, right?
IGNORE.
Dusty or
good, all right.
Or somebody was on.
Engaging prior to implementation, really key, right? It was this notion that don't bake the cake without our input and then feed it to us and get mad if we don't like how it tastes, right? So you're doing all the work. Hey, this is our great idea. We pump all this money into it and then we deliver it. No. Engage early, engage prior to, and make sure the community has some input into whatever it is you're delivering to the community. That one was really straightforward, and they were really candid about making sure that they had input into whatever you're bringing to their communities. Continuing the listening sessions. Every time we finished, there was a lot of appreciation for even having had the conversation. And we did more listening than anything. We would tee up kind of the theme, and then we would just let folks go. And then what we would tell them is that we would be taking their contacts and their comments back to the commission. And they were really appreciative of having been heard, having the opportunity to voice their thoughts and opinions, and the fact that we were actually going to be delivering what they said back to you guys. And not just in this space. I think the art of just going and meeting people where they are, and actually, my grandmother would say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should probably listen when you talk. I think that's an undervalued asset. Continuing these listening sessions, I think, would be vitally important, even if the themes or the purposes are still why, because right now I'm looking to put together this strategic plan. That's great. Whatever the next thing for the commission may be, continuing listening sessions to make sure that you got the proverbial community's input into that effort, I don't think you can go wrong there. And then last but not least, some sort of a database that captures all of this stuff. That one, I think kind of for the commission's sake, keeps things in some consolidated format so that you have a depiction of how things were, and will be as you're moving forward. And then perhaps, and what kind of came out in some of the sessions, this is some of the folks who were more engaged than others. They wanted, for them, if there was a landing space that they could go to that highlighted the resources, the opportunities, even before they were there. I think their point was, it would be great for us to know what's going to happen so that we can prepare. We don't have all the resources and the bells and whistles and citizen and rural spaces too, that the big city has, right? But if given the chance and enough runway to put some homework in, we too can compete for whatever's out there. Give us a chance, right? And so I think the notion of creating this, as they would put it, a database that gives them in real time some idea of what's going to happen would be beneficial. And then the rest of the report is a lot of commentary. We wanted to capture the input and feedback from the individuals. And again, I won't go through all of these comments, but it's their commentary, some of the key points, sometimes questions that were brought up. If you get a chance to kind of thumb through it, I think it's important to just hear how the conversation was going and some of the feedback you got from the folks. But really insightful. I too took a lot from it. I was telling Lewis, I think, especially the conversation with our folks from rural Indiana, because originally I'm looking, and in Fort Wayne with some of our folks from the disabled community, I'm looking at it through the racial lens, right? But access and equity in its purest form is across the board. And so being conscious about what that means for everybody, I think is important. So even myself is a learning experience for me having gone through it. So thank you guys for that opportunity. But yeah, so that completes the listening session, part 2, right? For 21, and I'll open it up for any thoughts, questions, or feedback.
Hi, this is Dusty. Jamal, that was amazing. And I think the situation is so multifaceted and complicated. I love that we got to listen. I think it might be more than our arts community can solve. Obviously, so many people try, but I like the idea that there's self-representation, like the lady that you mentioned who's doing, you know, making food for people with no assistance from anyone. It's those kind of people that will raise the level of everyone. Those are the people, I mean, you said she's not terribly educated, not blah, 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 whatever. Those are the people that will lead and people will follow because she's been doing good for so long for no other reason than a mitzvah, you know, that's in her heart. It boggles my mind. The things you said are so complicated. I don't know how to fix it.
Well, don't feel alone. I think if it was an easy fix, it would have been done already, but there's no magic staples button for it. And Dusty, 2 points of clarification. I don't know Ms. Johnson's education. She could be a double PhD as far as that. I have no idea.
I totally understand.
I just didn't get the impression in the conversation that she was, and even if she was, no one cared. To your point,
Yeah.
the thing that mattered to the folks on the call was that she was doing the work on her own. She didn't ask anybody for anything, and because of that, she had that connection, and she becomes kind of that example of what they were recommending the powers that be should do. It's easy, for example, to connect to someone like the United Way and say, hey, you're the United Way. We got this big grant. We're going to funnel it through you. You figure it out. And we just assume that, and I'm picking on the United Way, and by no means am I saying that the United Way is not doing good work. But they are big, and it's easy. You have somebody like you know, Valentine, you can say, well, I know she does good, but we have to make sure that those organizations are as connected as they should be, because there are pockets that get left out. Now, Dusty makes a good point. This is not an Arts Commission issue. You know, the notion of equity and inclusion is not something that, you know, I think is going to be solved by any one of us or the group by itself. This is something that has been an issue for decades and centuries. But we all, as they say, can do something. And if everyone puts forth some effort, I think we will begin to move the needle and create some change. Like, for example, Dusty, Ms. Johnson, right? She is doing her piece with request of nothing other than, you know, her ability to get up in the morning and do so. And people are watching that, and they recognize it, and they appreciate her for that. So,
just a question on the social capital piece, which is super interesting, and this idea that access is related to a network and the ability to do that. Did you get the feeling or have suggestions on how a commission, because networks are networks, we establish our own, but it's not just, you can't just send a PowerPoint out or do a presentation on a network. It is actually about engagement. So how would a commission go about getting access and helping to build an infrastructure of social capital in our underrepresented communities, so that they could feel like they could pick up the phone or send a text or access those folks? It seems to me that although we can't fix all of societal problems in that area, that maybe, just maybe, we could over time at least help start an infrastructure? Or is that just something that, does that make sense? Am I reading that correctly?
You are. So I've done some similar work for some other organizations, and I will say, not all of these pop up in the recommendations and the themes in those other spaces, but the need, that social capital piece, that's a common thread.
Absolutely, yeah.
And one that I don't think historically has been focused on, right? There's been some other areas that are important, but very rarely have people paid attention to the lack of social capital and how that ties to access. How do you achieve that? I'll be honest, I don't have that magic staples button, but I will say it's something that I personally practice. Without getting into anything too terribly personal, but so I personally come from the element that I work to support, and I was blessed some odd years ago being appointed to a position that gave me access, unbeknownst to me, to a wealth of people that I would have otherwise not had. And it wasn't that I sought it, it was literally the grace of God and being there. And so in the moment, recognized the importance of being in the place and the space that I was, and how I needed to leverage those relationships if I had any ambition on doing anything more than what I'd done previously, right? And so since then, my goal has been to be intentional about establishing those relationships. So I'm not sure what the official model would be, but all of us, you establish your network based off of your surroundings, people you're comfortable with, people you work with, people you grew up around, people who share your same education. What's uncomfortable is to walk into a place, in an environment where folks don't look like you, right? They don't share your same education level. They don't do what you do for a living, and have a genuine conversation and establish a genuine relationship with those folks, wanting nothing in return, just to establish that relationship. And so what naturally happens in that case, and I have it all the time with folks who will then call and text and say, hey, Jamal, I'm here actually this morning. I'm putting on a 3-on-3 tournament at Riverside for some kids in the neighborhood. I need to, do you know somebody who can get some signage together for us? And we can't do that. So Jamal says, sure, let me call around and see what I can find. But that relationship is genuine. I'll see Coach Mike a little later this afternoon, and he and I will talk shop about everything under the sun. Nothing too formal. It's not that crazy, but the relationship is genuine. And because of that, he has that network and can reach out. We all have that opportunity and can do that. There's parts and pieces and spaces and communities nearby where you live that you've probably never gone. And if you have gone, you haven't really spent any legitimate time there. I urge you to do so. Not the Arts Commission. I urge you to do so and establish those, because as you individually establish those relationships, you still are a representative of the Arts Commission. So when you come back here as an Arts Commissioner, you bring your network back with you. And so when, as an Arts Commission, you're having conversation about some grant or something that you're going to release, in your mind's eye, I know Coach so-and-so who just runs a little mom and pop shop, basketball league, or does whatever, right, in the community. I bet he or she could benefit from what I just heard. But that relationship is genuine. You never asked them for anything. You never wanted anything. It's not to make you feel better about yourself. It's just legitimately, you're expanding your brand too. And your brand should be, if we're really honest about the need for equity and inclusion, your brand should be more than just your comfortable surroundings. So that would be my challenge to everybody. Chad, but I'll admit, it's not like I have, that's just the way I exercise it. I don't know if that's the magic soup. It's been working for me.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions, points. The first one is you had mentioned, actually, a lot of people have used the phrase black and brown, but we also have to remember that Asians are also people of color, but you can't really say black, brown, and yellow. And so I can't leave that at the table. I've been trying to figure out how to do black, brown, and so that's something that I'd love to have help on with the vocabulary. But the second point is a lot longer, which is at some point you had spoken of festivals. my friend Paul Watanabe is a professor at UMass Boston. And back in the 70s, when he was speaking on community engagement, he said beautifully, man does not live by festivals alone. And so when we bring up festivals as community engagement for diversity and so on, more, I would say 99% of festivals are one-off deals. And so number one, I wonder if your listening tours have brought up any ideas of how to take advantage of festivals in a concrete way. And the second one is, I don't know who was speaking earlier about just before me, the human capital and so on. And I thought, now that's a really good connection that if festivals could be the starting point of making connections to build those kind of networks. I mean, as I said, Paul was speaking about this in the 70s, about community engagement and infrastructure and so on. And here we are. And I just thought, we talk about festivals a lot. And every good intention is that festivals will bring up diverse communities and we mingle, we learn and so on. Can we at this point just take advantage of what's already in existence and people have always thought of festivals as communication and engagement? So just throwing it out there, can we now start looking at it as a starting point?
Yeah, good points, Libby. I'll touch on the prior before, and you're right, maybe in the notion when saying black and brown, because I think even in the point in saying so, it wasn't to exclude everyone, it's more people of color, but to be more conscious and specific about the fact that there are other groups of color out there that we need to make sure that we call out Asian, some of our native folks as well. I've heard that too, so very, very good point there. We'll be conscious of that. The comment or the question about festivals, within the midst of the listening session, we talked about, hey, what's going on in the community that the Arts Commission could tap into. People naturally say festivals, and here are some of the things that we have going on. Sometimes, as I mentioned, kind of the health symposium that they mentioned aren't huge events, but they're a big deal to them and their respective community. I think leveraging the fact that they exist, one, to your point, I think is important. But two, when you go, however you go, be intentional about that engagement. And establishing relationship with folks that are there, I think would be a good first step. Because those tend to lead into other festivals, right? I'll just use festivals as a loose word, because they're not all festivals. They're just events and occasions and happenings within a community that community embraces and look forward to. They're important to them. And if the community is important to you, then the thing that they embrace should probably be important to you as well. Those are really good points that we have. And I wish I had more answers for how best to do so, but I think the fact that they exist create an opportunity. And we can take advantage of that opportunity in a genuine and intentional way. I think that'd be a good first step.
Yeah. Thank you, Joel.
Libby,
thank you.
We're gonna go and for the sake of time, we're gonna move on. But if there's other questions or commentary that we want to discuss with Jamal, I think he'd probably be willing to connect with some of us individually, or obviously we need to keep this conversation going, because ultimately, as you said, we can't just give a nod to these things. We have to be fully aware, and as we're thinking about things moving forward, we're not going to find the fix in one thing, but we need to find the fix in many. And always to keep this kind of at the top of our thoughts, then hopefully we'll do better at this as we move forward. So thanks so much. Great important information.
Thank you.
Larry, you want to share the regional partner report with us?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be as brief as I can. This is my final meeting. I'm stepping down, so I want to thank Alan and the commissioners, Louis and the staff. It's been an honor and a privilege to be an arts partner. And I want to say that your responsible leadership is having an effect. I think in my region, people have a better understanding and appreciation of what you're doing. And I think in the last year during the pandemic, your ability to deliver the dollars in so many different ways to the artists of the state of Indiana has been very effective. And as you probably know, we've discovered a lot of new artists and arts organizations in the state once that money became available. So I see great things for the partnership in the future. We met on June 17th. The new co-chairs are going to be Ann Fields-Monaco from Region 4 and Ann McKim from Region 10. They are very focused on community engagement. So in relation to what Jamal was just talking about, I do think the partners can be a great help in forming those networks, showing some leadership in those networks in those local communities. And part of the reason the support that the IAC is supporting them, but the way it challenges those arts partners to be involved more in community engagement, and also challenge them to be involved in inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. So I think it's great the way that you keep the important topics on the table and you keep pushing the arts partners to be aware of those and to move forward. We also have a number of two other partners that will be leaving in Region 3 and Region 12. I think we have people lined up to fill those slots. Sherry in Region 6 is still holding seniority, so I would lean on her if you want to get some history of what's happening with the partners. That's really all I really have to say. You have new chairs coming on. I think they're going to do a great job, and I thank you for the opportunity to work with you, and wish you the best of luck in the future.
Larry, thanks for all your work and being available for us at these meetings and sharing the information from the partners. It really means a lot. Wish you a lot of luck too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to fiscal year 2022 officer elections. There's a proposed slate for officers for the next for the fiscal year 2022, which is Alberta Barker as chair, Ann Valentine as vice chair, and Dusty Stimler as secretary. Any discussion, other nominations? Hearing none. Not seeing Alberta run for the door. Is there a motion to approve that slate of officers?
So
yeah, a motion, and just pick one as a second. All right, Stephanie.
Thank you. Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Oh, yes.
Oh, thank you. Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey? Aye. Alan?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Dusty?
Aye.
And Ann?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, new officers. I'll turn it over to Alberta, new chair.
Oh, well, thank you, Alan. I just continue to be amazed at the great work of the commission, the IAC staff, the regional arts partners, the commissioners themselves. It's amazing to me what all has been accomplished during this pandemic year, and how the IAC staff took charge and made a lot of arts organizations survive. So thank you for all the work. It's really appreciated. I look forward to, I guess, this upcoming transition year. Louis is leaving us. Alan is leaving us. Yeah, I know.
Cars outside.
The motor is running. So anyway, I just look forward to it, appreciate everyone's support, and have a little thank you for Alan on his outgoing chairmanship.
So Alberta?
Yes.
So I thought like we were going to close the meeting, we have some other things too, then we could do that.
Okay.
come off of line and all of that.
Okay.
So why don't we,
Great idea.
I'm just asserting myself.
Yes.
I know. So it's odd, but
That's okay, you keep us in mind, so thank you for that. So I think at this point in time, the only other thing then is adjournment. Is there anything else?
I just wanted to take this opportunity. Kara Herring has joined us. There was a big event this morning for the governor, the SACM Awards, and everyone was kind of tied up with that. But she's our Chief Equity and Access Officer for the state, came on board in February, was that right? And we've had a chance to spend a little time together, and she's going to help us with our Cultural Equity Committee and kind of our efforts that ramp off of some of the work that Jamal has done with connecting with communities that we don't connect with and valuing their values and helping them. So, and making them part of the commission. So anyhow, we're happy to have her on board, and for her wisdom and enthusiasm and willingness, really appreciate it. So just want to make sure, and she's gonna hang out for a few minutes here. So if you'd like to meet her, opportunity to do so. So thanks for coming.
Okay, sorry, we're at an event, so I wanted to swing by just so I could shake everyone's hands and put faces with names. So I'm gonna hang out once you're all finished with the official business.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. If you are on old business, I'm now old business, so I'd like to just say, really quick, I really want to thank Louis very sincerely and the staff. Being the chair is such a delight because you all are remarkable. And I've tried to mention that as much as I can, but I have not in my professional life worked with a staff in either other nonprofits, corporations that are clients of mine, other businesses that are as good as you all are at caring about what you do and delivering what you do. And the commissioners, we get a chance to sit here and listen and hear and kind of gasp many times that what you accomplish. So very sincerely, thank you and congratulations on what you do as professionals, because it's all inspiring. And Louis, I thank you for kind of making sure I get through this process, because it is some challenging to kind of be here. And I remember my first meeting and being wildly nervous. I mean, 6 years ago. And now I sit here and because of Louis's guidance, that is one of the reasons he sits right next to you, by the way. Got some bruises. No, not really. But anyway, thank you sincerely to you as well. And the commissioners, I mentioned to one person, I got a note from Nancy Stewart this morning. Congratulations. Wishing me well at my final meeting. Yeah, but that means a lot because we've made really great connections with the people we work with. And we get a chance to do something for all other Hoosiers. And we don't get many chances like that. So anyway, I hope those who are new here really get to enjoy it as much as I did. And for those that I've got to work with, thank you so much. So that's it.
Well, he's a jolly good fellow.
I would be remiss if I did not thank Chapin Schnick and Anna Polsma, who have came in yesterday, got all the tech set up, managed to stream us live to Facebook, make sure we all could see and hear each other. And also a shout out to Stephanie Fendler, who does all the things for us and getting things set up, and then Bridget, who put together the PowerPoint. So it was a big lift to put together a hybrid meeting. And so our gratitude to you guys for that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.